seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.
Okay, so we're back with Laura Brand, serial killer whisperer, criminologist extraordinaire. Once again, we're doing this at very late hours. She's a night owl. She's finally gotten a break from all the serial killers calling her. Who call
I just tucked them in for the night.
You just tucked them in? Thank God.
Yeah, I tucked them in.
Good thing that most of them are on the West Coast. All right, so today, Laura, we're gonna go over some of these more Bittaker recordings. I can't believe how many you have. And
over 1,000 hours. Yeah, Bittaker, just wow. Bittaker. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You're very smart to record all this stuff. It's just valuable data.
It is. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about this particular recording, when you recorded it, and what was your objective during this? Because I'm sure every time you go into these discussions with them, you have a clear plan and agenda you want to go in with.
Yeah.
So kind of talk us through that.
So in forensic psychology, the sexual fantasy that they have, like a sexual sadist or a sexual deviant, we call their sexual fantasy kind of the treasure trove, because that's kind of where we're going to, trace it back to the childhood. It's always going to stem back to something from their childhood. So you want to dive into this as deep as possible. So you're going to hear in this tape, I'm diving in with Bittaker, on every aspect of his, sexual deviant fantasy. And the reason is because I am trying to trace it back to his childhood. And you're also going to hear, there is a part in there coming up that is something that we've talked about previously in a podcast about, this trailer being buried in the side of the mountain. He brings that back up in this tape as well. So here's another, recording of him also bringing this up of, I would put a trailer in the side of the mountain. And this is where I kind of stop and go, did this really happen? Is this fantasy? Because when you're looking at it, and with Shootman, Norris, and Bittaker, they're talking about the trailer. We know that Shootman has a trailer up in Northern California where they were taking girls. Then the cabins in the woods we found out were, I won't say the name, the cabins in San Gabriel.
Yep.
And so when he's mentioning this trailer, this is where you kind of stop and go, oh my God, is this a possibility of something else he did? And, this comes from exploring his sexual deviant fantasy. And it's kind of wild. You're going to hear some really crazy stuff in this. And I'm just kind of going on the journey with him. Like Alice in Wonderland, I always said to him, I'm just saying, okay, so what do you do next? How does this happen? Kind of going into the semantics of it. Because I'm trying to, follow this white rabbit down this rabbit hole to see where his mind is going. That's where you kind of just want to follow him and see where he's taking you, where he's going to lead you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that's cool before we get into this, what I want to tell our audience, because we get a lot of questions about why aren't we hearing recordings from Roy Norris? And so kind of explain to the audience and the listeners why that isn't the case. You have a lot of letters from him, but you don't have recordings. So explain to the listeners why you don't have that.
Norris didn't want to be recorded, and he didn't want to have anything to do with, the production or the book that I was writing. So he opted to be not recorded. That's the whole reason I don't have any recordings of Norris. He just wanted nothing to do with anything for the study. Well, he did actually participate in the study, but he didn't want to be recorded on the phone calls. And, I have integrity with the prisoners and, the killers, and if they don't want to be recorded, I don't record them. So I did extensive work with Norris, but he didn't want to be recorded. He didn't want to be, part of the production. So, or the book or anything like that. So that's why there's no recordings of Norris, where Bittaker did opt in.
Yeah. What did Bittaker think about that?
That Norris didn't want to be part of anything?
Yeah.
He thought, he knew that Norris was scared that some of his lies were going to be contradicted. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did he call him anything derogatory for not
All
doing
the
it?
time. All the time. Yeah.
Did you correspond with Norris? You have letters though, right?
Oh yeah. I actually had a really good relationship with Norris first. Yeah. It was Bittaker the one I had problems with it initially.
Mm-hmm. So Norris was more open to talking to you originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Norris is just open. He was open with like anybody who, went to him, friends, psychologist, criminologist, pen pals, just groupie, anybody. He would talk to anybody. And this is why there's a lot of misspread information about the case online. The rumors about them being adopted, foster care, abuse, sexual abuse. That is all from Norris just talking and spewing lies, to anybody. And it's made its way to the internet. So I'm always trying to dispel these rumors about this case because Norris has kind of carried this narrative that's false. And I believe, researching the case, I believe Norris actually did this out of guilt, feeling like he turned on Bittaker. So he made up these rumors about sexual abuse, physical abuse, foster care, and spread it out to for people to have empathy towards Bittaker. But it's all false.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Fake
Yeah.
news.
It is.
Fake
It's like
news.
It's
crazy
fake news, literally fake news, and it's still on the internet. Yeah.
Wow. And people actually believe it because I've seen it.
People believe it. It's in. I can't even. People will send me links to podcasts or TV, whatever about the case, and I'm like, I can't listen to it because everybody's reading this stuff that's still online. That's just Norris's,
Right.
propaganda really being put out there. Mm-hmm.
I know it happens a lot. Just because it's on the internet, it's true.
You're right. Right.
It's all true.
Right.
It
And
might
they're
be coming from a serial killer in prison.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Even if it's coming from a
Right. Because he's telling the truth.
Right. Because he told the truth in the beginning.
Right.
Absolutely.
He had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. That's why we can't find Cindy and Andrea.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's
Right.
play this first part, and then we'll stop it when, like we always do, if we find something that we want to talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for using Global Tail Link.
Hey.
A little background of how this came about. Started when I was at El Reno, Oklahoma Federal Reformatory. I was deemed to be nuts due to some various things, so I was living in a room in the hospital section. It had no bars, just a regular door and a sort of lock on it. And I was in there for a couple months, and I had nobody to talk to. I started first drawing floor plans for a normal house, and this kind of snowballed from there. And I got onto this trip we were just talking about. So, it's just escape from the conditions I was living under.
Do you think it was because you were locked up, those fantasies of captivity emerged?
Do that again?
I said, do you think it was because you were locked up that those fantasies of captivity emerged?
I had nothing better to do. Didn't have anything to read, nobody to talk to, just sit there 24 hours a day. Your mind's got to do something like that, or you're already screwed.
Where did the aliens come in from? Was it from a movie, or you just thought it would be just the perfect scapegoat?
I had to give some explanation of why she was just, had been captured, as it were, and me also, and explain these rather vast living conditions we had. It's just, you had to try to put up a decent story that the person could theoretically believe it, and not just brush it off as there too many flaws and no explanations. So I got a good imagination. That's no problem, really.
Right. It needed to be believable for them.
Yeah, basically that's it. Got to be as credible as possible. hadn't never figured out a way to have the aliens communicate with us while we were separate, except maybe making up a pre-taped statement to come over the PA system and talking to us. And, it was kind of a sticky problem. Probably accomplishable somehow.
So once you guys were down there, and you want her to fall in love with you, how did you plan to like go about that? How are you gonna execute it?
What? That last part?
Like, how are you gonna do it? How are you gonna get her to fall in love with you while you guys were down there?
Just be a nice guy, I'm going to be the only one around. So, it's just hope. I just pretend it would happen no matter what. So, it wasn't necessarily a rational fantasy. Something to think about, something to play with, as it were, something to solve all the problems, something to occupy my mind, basically.
Oh. Yeah.
And achieve a goal that I really wanted, of course, for some time.
How did you plan to be like a nice guy down there? Like, what are things that you thought about doing?
I would be a trustee, as it were, and I help her out in whatever way. I never got too deep into figuring all that out. But as long as I'm around, it's bound to have some effect on her.
It's so twisted.
So, okay, when he was first describing this fantasy to me, I was like, this is a movie. I've seen this movie. It's the exact plot of the movie Cloverfield. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was like his
literal... The Cloverfield, the one where the J.J. Abrams one, where it's like the mysterious monster?
No, there's some type of end of Earth thing. There's aliens or whatever.
It was like
they're underground, and
you
the
never
girl
saw
wakes
them.
up. Yeah, and she's just like, "What's happening?" And he's like, "Oh, we can't go outside. The world's ended. This is like the bunker, and here we are, and I saved you." That was his whole.
I saved you so I can kill you.
Well, his plan was, what he said was like, she would fall in love with him while they're underground, right, in the bunker. This is his way.
So he had to create an end of the world scenario.
Build a bunker.
In a bunker to hopefully have love in his life.
Yes.
Because that's the only way, because it's going to be, if I'm the last man on the planet, maybe she'll go out with me.
Oh my God, that's so twisted.
But that shows just how insecure, these guys are.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's like when you see what they've done, like the horrific crime. I mean, the horrific ways that they tortured these women. It's like, it's all rooted down in this insecurity, this deep-seated insecurity.
Deep-seated insecurity. The world has to end. I have to build a bunker, and I'm the only thing you have. That's their fantasy.
Because that's why he wanted to build the bunker.
Right. But Bittaker's was, I've always heard the bunker, with so many cases, whatever. But Bittaker, his was like, he showed me the floor plans and had it all mapped out. And he even says the PA system would come on and say, the world has ended or whatever. He had every single detail, mapped out, written down, mapped out, like I've never seen before. And I've shown it to quite a number of forensic psychologists. They've never seen anything like it before either.
And
how mapped out it was.
He did this before he was locked up?
Yes.
Okay, so this is all part of his Dungeons and Dragons game he was playing with himself in his head. It's like with all the other crazy, sadistic fantasies he had rolling around in his head, this was his design for this bunker, for this end of the world scenario that he was creating,
right,
in hopes that when he brought his victims back there, that they would see, well, I can't go outside because the world is ending.
Right.
I guess I'll stay in here with you. And if
Right.
you're the only man on the planet left, I guess I'll have to love you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I said, how would you get the girls there? Like, how would they even, wake up and be like, where am I? And he said, well, I would just gas them through the window. I'd open their window and gas them. That was his plan. Mm-hmm.
So they have to be unconscious.
Unconscious, and he would move them into the bunker, and then he'd wake up. They would wake up, and he would be like, the world has ended. It's just us that saved you. Mm-hmm.
I saved you, so now you're my slave forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they would magically fall in love with him. This is the whole thing. Yeah.
You're going to learn to love me.
Right. So you're the only human being. Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think when he started telling you this stuff? I mean, because this is kind of like, I've never heard something like this before.
I mean, there's one part where I'm like, okay, so where did the robots come in? Because like, even I'm like, kind of like, this is getting crazy. Like how elaborate he's going with it, Yes. But a lot of the guys that I study and interview who have these fantasies, of like this bunker or captives, or I need to take a woman and put her here. It all stems from some sort of abandonment from the mother or the next girlfriend. So it's like, okay, well, she left me and I need to take a woman and put her someplace and keep her someplace to make her love me. This is where it's like deep rooted and stemming from. And what you're saying is like where these deviant sexual fantasies kind of transpire from, as warped as it is, it's stemming from this abandonment issue, as well as the insecurity they have within themselves.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. All right, I didn't hear the robot part. Did he talk about that already? Did I miss that?
I think he goes more into it. Yeah.
Okay. I want to hear about that.
You could have done that in your real life scenario with Roy.
Well, we could do it on a small scale. So we got all the resources and things. Would it cross my mind to go up there in the hills and rent his backhoe or a little tractor and find appropriate areas and dig it out and go out and steal a house trailer, bring it up there and push the dirt back over it. Some kind of like there was a little kidnapping of a bunch of kids, and the guy did actually bury them. They weren't there very long before somebody found out about it and the kids got rescued.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cases like that with the trailers and the cabins and the underground. I come across them a lot.
Yeah. So, it's not really a big problem. The real problem, something like that, is getting them unconscious at home to that place. I never got in too much into worrying about how that was done because it was just a fantasy.
Right, but I mean, you weren't scared about going into people's homes.
I don't know. I've gone in and burglarized their houses, as it were, and I knew the people were there. Remember?
Right. You've told me stories about going into their homes even while they're in bed, so it wouldn't be that far for you.
I had no real sense. I just did things. Why should people wake up and leave their doors unlocked? There's no alarm system. Why would you? I think you call it a hot prowl. It's a name for somebody that does that. It just didn't bother me as long as I didn't have to confront them or they confront me. I didn't want any real interaction. I could sneak around quiet enough. Not going to wake them up.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
What's interesting is it's sneaking around, hiding underground, doing all of this stuff when no one knows you're doing it. Hot prowl in their house when they're asleep and they don't know. Like, what is that all about?
Predator.
Yeah. Literally, predator, deviant. Yeah. They will get a sexual thrill from that.
Huh.
Even just looking at windows. That's why we have peeping Toms. They will literally get a sexual thrill just from looking in a window. It's that because they get that power. Okay. They're watching you sleep. They're watching you do whatever, take a shower, come out of your room, whatever. They're watching you and you have no idea that they're watching you. Mm-hmm. So they feel like they have a sense of dominance and power over you because they're watching you and you have no idea.
Yeah.
That's really creepy.
That's characteristically mostly comes from males, right?
Yeah.
I don't really hear, correct me if I'm wrong. You don't see women prowling and peeping toms.
No.
It's not.
I can't even think of any girlfriend who even can you, Cindy, if whoever even thought of an idea of that? Yeah.
They stalk.
Yeah, I've had women stalk me. Crazy.
Yeah, women stalk, but not for a sexual thrill typically,
Yeah.
No, it's more of a control thing.
Yeah.
Or it's just someone who's crazy.
Or tormenting. Stalking is you want the person to know that you're there.
Yeah, it's scary.
Right.
It's like single white female. I've had that. Scary.
Single white female. Yeah.
You've had that too. We've both had that. Yeah. Oh, that's scary. I didn't like that. That is terrifying. It is. But one of my biggest fears is waking up and having someone standing over me. I would lose my mind.
The single white females are in your face. You're here, they want to be you. So they're constantly trying to find you, stalking every aspect of your social media, that kind of stuff. Where males are more they want to look through the windows and watch you. Mm-hmm. It's more they don't want you to know that they're watching.
Right.
They want to follow you home from work. They want to watch your routines, when you're most vulnerable, when you're coming in and out of the house, when your husband goes away. Mm-hmm.
When you're vulnerable, sure, because then it gives them that power, that control.
Ooh. Exactly. Most will watch when their husbands are away or boyfriends come and go, or if they're a father, when the father goes away, they're watching for that male presence, typically of when they're away. And if there's no male presence, they're just watching, your habits and just they're looking for when you're most vulnerable. When Norris was, he was stalking 5 girls at the time they were arrested, and he brought Joe Jackson to each spot. And one of the girls he brought to was at a beauty store. This is in Hermosa Beach. And he had said to Joe, he goes, I watch her every day, and she usually closes shop this day, this day, this day. And the whole outlet, because it was in a strip mall, the outlet in the strip mall closes about 9 p.m. So the other stores close about 9 p.m. This beauty supply store stays open until 10 p.m. And he goes, so it's open an hour later. And he goes, I've noticed when I've watched her, she does not lock the front doors when she goes to sweep and lock the back doors. He goes, so what I'm going to do is wait until 10 p.m. When she shuts the lights off, does her sweep, go to lock the back doors. He goes, that's what I'm going to get her. And he'd done this by doing surveillance on her for a week.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, you never know who's watching you.
Right.
That's the thing. And when you're single, I always tell my friends, don't let your daughters live alone. I lived alone and I was being watched. It was terrifying what happened.
Yeah.
And it's because you just don't know who's watching you.
Yeah.
When you're in your 20s, you're not paying attention. You're just you're not really paying attention to what's going on. And there's so many times where this has happened.
And now it's a whole nother level because they can watch you from your social media. Yeah. They can find out where you live. Now that there's these things now, they're putting cameras near people's houses.
Ugh, it's terrible.
It's a big thing in LA right now. It's because they're robbing people's houses, but and they're putting cameras in their bushes and disguising them as rocks. And so they know when you're there, when you don't know you're there. And I'm sure the real creeps are doing that with everything. We were just this other case that we're working on for the Noah Prez Grove. One of the people involved is who worked for the county was arrested because he put a camera in the county's female's bathroom and in the women's restroom. and they found it, and we're going right towards his cell phone.
Wow.
And you know what happened to him? Slap on the wrist.
Nothing.
Wow.
So he's doing other shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's so bold to do that in his workplace.
So this kind of behavior that he was like, these stories that he's telling you, these are all like metaphors for the things that he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. How did you cut through the wall between the fantasy and the reality when he was telling you this?
Well, that's where I had to start doing my investigation, where I found about the trailer, the cabins, that's where you've got to stop, where you almost are like part psychologist, part investigator, because, that's where you got to stop and go, you know what, let me take this discovery, let me look through it, let me really analyze it, from the psychology aspect of it. But I need to look into this because, certain things are scary, like when Bittaker just mentioned about the backhoe and the trailer. He states that in so many interviews that it's making me uncomfortable, that it's something like I know I need to look into. What's the Shakespeare quote? Doth protest so much.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I look out for, because I think Sigmund Freud said it, he might not be saying it in so many words, but our truth will ooze out of us in different ways, in different aspects. And that's what you have to really, look for, especially when you're interviewing these types of criminals, is they're going to be telling you their truth, but in different ways that you really got to look for. It's kind of like the words in between the words and their body language. It's kind of like a multitude of aspects all at once that you have to like pay attention to. And so when an offender is saying, oh, well, I could have done this, but they're saying it almost, multiple times in different interviews, you're like, wait a minute. That's when I'm going to stop and pay attention. If they're bringing up an aspect or something about their sexual fantasy, but it's also relating to their crimes, that's when you got to sit up and pay attention. You got to look for these cues they're giving to you during these interviews of when you really need to hone in and pay attention. And that's going to break into, new leads into a case. That's what I found about the cabins in the woods. I found about the trailers, the shootmen. If you're paying attention to this and then you do the investigation on top of it, this is what's going to break everything wide open for you. And Knott's Berry Farm is a perfect example. Yeah.
Exactly. I wanted to ask you a question, because after listening to a lot of these recordings with you, the thing that I've noticed about his speech pattern and his intonations, there's a rhythm to it, and I want you to tell us what you've learned about that rhythm, and whether or not when he does these certain pauses, when he goes, it's like, are those tells of like when he's being deceptive, or what can you tell us about his speech pattern and intonations, and whether or not that's when you can kind of, because you say you see it, you hear it, and then that's when you have to listen up. So kind of
a lot of the times, a lot of his pauses I've noticed, almost there are some that are different, but typically what I found with his pauses, a lot of them are him weighing out whether should I go into, like, should I say more or should I not? It's almost a methodical thought of him of going, what should I reveal? It's more of a control aspect of him saying, he's buying time is the the best way to put it. He's weighing it out. He's just making a pause. He's making a decision in his head of whether he should go into it or not. He's drawing.
What I get is that he's doing that, but he's also figuring out how he's going to paint it to make it seem like he's not so bad.
A lot of times, yeah. A lot of times, yeah.
Or he's whether or not he's going to tell you the whole truth.
Yeah.
To me, it's like when people do that, that means they're going to be deceptive in some way.
Well, he's weighing. What am I going to reveal here? Because a lot with serial killers, you got to remember they're only going to give you carrots. They're only going to be like, here's a little piece, here's a breadcrumb. If you want to get to the gingerbread house, you got to keep following me because they want you to keep coming back. The fear of abandonment with this sexual fantasy. You know, their mother left them, the girlfriend left them. Now they have to take a captive to be the only person on earth. Now you're here in front of them. Are you just going to interview them, get the goods, and leave? You know, so it's like, here's a little breadcrumb. Here's a little breadcrumb. Are you going to follow me? Are you going to stay with me? Are you going to love me? Type of thing. You know, are you going to be my bestie? You know, I'm all alone in life. That's how they're thinking. So it's like, here's a little breadcrumb each and every way, step of the way. And this is why I think I've been so successful with all of them, is because I've been there, sitting there in front of them for the last 10 years saying, hey, still here. I'm still here. You know, I'm showing up. I'm still talking to you. I'm right here. It's that persistence, that consistency that they've never had in their life, you know, makes such a drastic impact on them. And this is why they've been able to give up the information that they have to me. Is like, they're like, okay, you know what? She's done the work. She's been here consistently. I know even if she gives it to me, she'll still be here. And, you know, you look at Rob, 25 years with Germantown, you know, it's a proven effective method, you know, because really what Rob and I are doing is we're targeting, just like Alan always says, the underlying need, you know, that abandonment. We're targeting that, you know, insecurity, that need that they're trying to fill. We're targeting that, and that's why we've produced the results that we have.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed about when you're talking, when you get him rolling like a snowball, that's when some of the truth comes out.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no like, if you get him in a conversation where it's like back and forth, and you kind of step up the tempo of the conversation with questions and stuff, that's when, you know, to me, it sounds he's being truthful.
Yeah.
And
you'll hear the tempo. Like if we start going back and forth, you'll hear it.
Because he doesn't have time to edit himself or come up with another saying, because you're
hammering him.
You're hammering him.
Right.
Really,
you know, all these guys, they have scripts in their heads from interviewers and prison psychologists. So the big thing you have to do is go in and knock them off their game, knock them off their script. You know, ask the questions they have not been asked before, and throw them curveballs. Throw them things that they've never been asked before. That's a big key to it too. You want to knock them. Yeah, they're going to stick to that script. They will until they die. They will, unless you throw them off it.
Okay, let's go back here. See what else he has to say.
In fact, one night I was taking the dog for a walk down the block, and somebody didn't answer their doorbell, and the house was dark, so I went around the back. The door was unlocked. I opened it up, and the dog just went in by herself. And then I heard somebody, obviously older, asking, who's that, or where are you, or something along those lines. I didn't realize anybody was there, so I quietly called the dog back and left.
What age did you first go into somebody's home? I know you were young, but
about 15, 16.
15, 16.
17.
Was it?
That's the age that the fantasy.
That was not truthful.
That's not true.
That's not true. So in the cage, he told me he started around, I think it was 11, 12. I think it was 12. But he told me about a time when he was 12. He went into a house and he tried to steal, I think I told this in a previous episode, he tried to steal the tassels off the curtains by taking a lighter. And they were some type of fabric, and they all went up into flames. The guy was upstairs. Thank God he was okay. But actually, if you watch the Toolbox Killer, you'll hear Mary O'Toole, the FBI profiler, talk about how his adoptive mother took a match or a cigarette lighter and put it, or a cigarette, on the back of his leg to teach him not to play with fire. This is why his adoptive mother actually did that, is because he almost killed somebody by means of fire at 12 years old. That was the whole reason.
Wow.
So when Bittaker, when Bittaker always says, or even in the show, they were like, his adoptive mother was abusive. I'm like, was she? Because that's his only tale of abuse. And it's because he almost killed somebody at 12 years old.
Yeah.
And she was trying to teach him not to play with fire. Yeah. So I think we can give her a pass for that, because he really almost killed somebody. Yeah. So again, you might hear a story like that from one of the killers, where it's like, okay, let's dive a little deeper into that. why did your parent react that way? And then it's like, oh, well, I kind of almost killed somebody when I was 12 and, the curtains were burning type of stuff. This is why you kind of want to dig deeper into their story, just any story they're giving, because typically it's not always, the surface of what they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, back there, that would have been classified as an object lesson.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, God, in the 40s? Yeah, that would have been normal. Yeah. 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 That's his only account of abuse. It was because she burned him so he could feel what fire was like, to teach him not to go into people's houses and really kill somebody. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's what turned him into a serial killer.
No.
So.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what else.
Fantasy started too, like around that age too, right?
Not the underground house. No, that wasn't until later,
19. Yeah. Well, still teenage years.
19. Yeah.
Did you ever keep if you ever saw an attractive woman or girl? Did you ever watch them?
I'd look in the windows when I'd still an alarm clock, put it under my pillow and set it for midnight or something. And then I'd go out a window and wander around the neighborhood, wondering, why am I here? What am I doing? And the aliens couldn't come pick me up, and it's like I didn't belong there. And I just wander around.
Did he say
aliens are going to come pick him up?
Yeah, he mentioned aliens again.
What was he talking about?
I don't think he meant realistically. I think he was just giving kind of more of a metaphor of, I don't feel like I belong here. And I think what he meant by that is, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I don't almost feel human. And this is something very typical reported with people who suffer from antisocial personality disorder. Sociopaths, psychopaths is like, they almost feel like an alien in their own skin. They don't know who they are. They don't know who others are. They don't know how to, interact in ways. That's why they have a delayed emotional response. They actually will look around the room if something something shocking happens. This is actually a tactic I do with a lot of them, is I will shoot something very shocking at them and watch their response, because it'll be delayed. Because they're kind of like, how do I react? Because they're not feeling the emotions that we do,
Give us an example. What would you do?
Different. I shoot, with serial killers, I would shoot something really crazy at them. I don't really want to go down there some of the stuff I would say. But another thing I've done is I've sneezed to see, or yawned, because a lot of people will automatically mirror that and yawn, because it's an empathetic response that we all have, just something very simple like that. But also the shocking thing you can do is just be like, oh my God, my dog just died. My mother just died. Right? Something like that, right? Where a normal person would go, oh my God, they'll look around and be like this, for at least for a couple seconds until they react, because they don't know how to respond. They don't understand that that's a hurtful thing or something that we react to emotionally. They're not feeling those, emotions or reactions like we do. So it's going to be delayed, and you just got to kind of watch that. And it'll only be a few seconds. It will only be, it's very hard to catch, but it's only be a few seconds before they're like, oh wait, yeah, I'm supposed to react to this. But you will notice it, you'll pick up on it. Another thing I see with antisocial personality disorders is a lot of them talk about primal needs. So they'll talk about food extensively. They'll always talk about their eating, their needs, anything pleasure seeking. It could be sex, it could be drugs, but it's always about me. I want food, I want sex, I want sleep. Something like that. It'll be very primal. Their speech will be primal. And that's something I always look for as well.
Yeah. I want to go back to a little bit, because you talked about him, the whole alien thing that we stopped the recording for, that he says he doesn't feel comfortable in his skin. How old was he when he said he was 18, 19?
I think he was, what did he say, 15, 16? Teenage years. Yeah.
Teenage years.
Yeah.
Isn't that pretty common for a teenager to not feel comfortable in their own skin?
That don't feel like they belong? For a teenager too. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know I didn't.
no one, I don't think any teenager, I would be surprised to find one who does. I mean,
Yeah.
but this is also why we cannot diagnose antisocial personality under the age of 18, because the traits of antisocial personality you will find in teenagers.
Yeah.
That's why it has to be 18 years old. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I might go into a house and look in the windows. Only once I ever saw anything really interesting. And didn't go in that many because that was so late at night. It was bound to be people at home. So, it's weird.
Did you ever think, like, it's funny how you said you would roam the streets at night, like peeping, going into homes, and you felt like if you wondered if an alien was going to come pick you up. I'm wondering, did you? I'm just thinking out loud. And then when you said you felt your emotions later in life. You said fully human. Did you ever like feel like you weren't human, like your life, like during your life?
I didn't know what else to call that piece. And basically, somebody that isn't acting like a human and has empathy for others, just doesn't care. They're not. I don't consider them fully human. I didn't consider myself fully human. Being able to go out and so casually hurt people. So it seemed like a fitting title.
So you felt like an alien because you weren't feeling the emotions of a human.
No, it wasn't that I was feeling like an alien. Just I recognized that I wasn't acting in a rational, normal manner, acting like a sociopath or whatever. And it's kind of how I grew up. I never developed those emotions and thoughts.
This call and your telephone number will be...
It's interesting how he's kind of self-diagnosing himself.
Yeah.
And
you can hear his honesty come out in that moment too, where he says, yeah, I could go out and casually hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling the emotion. Yeah. You'll hear those rare moments of him. You know what? Yeah. I wasn't feeling the emotions. I wasn't feeling empathy. I could casually hurt a human being. Right.
Yeah. There's no empathy.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like,
I mean, that's got to feel. I mean, I can't imagine feeling that way to actually, hurt an animal, let alone a human. I mean, that's got to sit there and see, a living being in pain. I mean, and not feel anything. I can't think of any other way than really an alien.
Well, he wasn't just hurting them; he was torturing them.
Right.
So that's like, it's one thing to punch someone, out of anger, but there he was actually torture, and he was getting enjoyment out of a thrill of torturing them before they killed, just to see how they would react and feel the power that he would have over this person, and basically almost like he was handling a marionette and making them do whatever they wanted, what he wanted to do. It's just, but what's interesting is that the recordings that we heard with him when he was on the stand for his trial, he was very analytical about what he was doing that too. And he answered those questions, whether or not he was being glib or he just wanted to shock people. But, it has the same kind of quality of what he's talking about right now. The only difference is he just sounds more exhausted.
Yeah.
And old.
Mm-hmm.
But it really he hasn't changed at all.
I see a change. I do see a change. I don't see any part of him talking about emotions before. And maybe I've had 10 years. Well, I had what was it? Not 10 years, 6 years with him. So when I first encountered him, he was vicious. I mean, really vicious. And then it was after a couple of years, I finally started getting to him to warm up. And I would ask him, about his emotions. And he would just shut down. He would just he didn't want to talk about it. And then like finally he starts going into it. I would start exploring, his antisocial personality. And I would say, what does it feel like? What was it like? And he was like, it was like, I didn't feel anything. And then he described what he told to me, what we're talking about now, the dam breaking, the fully human, when he wrote this thing about becoming fully human. So I went to a forensic psychology symposium with some of the experts, and I brought his writing and I said, okay, so he's saying it's like a dam breaking, and everybody's mouth dropped. And I said, what's going on? And I think this is why Dr. Berger at San Quentin also flew 6 psychologists in, is because when I presented it at the forensic psychology symposium that I was at, all of their jaws dropped too. They go, this is a phenomenon we're just now getting documented, because psychopaths, that's genetic. Okay, like psych, think brain, sociopaths, that's social, that's learned behavior. Like the emotion is there, but it's kind of blocked. So when I brought it to them, they had said, there's been documented cases that we have. This is brand new forensic psychology going on right now, studies of cases where there's this, and they've all described it the exact same way, of a dam breaking. So when I presented to them, they're like, is this a real case? They all got excited and they were reading what I said. And I go, I'm seeing a dam. I go, from what I've seen from him, I've seen a drastic change. And I go, and from what I've heard, and I've seen the psych evals, I even brought the psych evals with me. And I go, he's flown in 6 psychologists as well. And they got excited too. And then I went back and I was all excited with Bittaker. So I said, you know what, I think if this is a real case, and we're just starting to document these cases, could this be the key into, because we have no therapeutic treatment at the moment right now for any type of antisocial personality disorder, whether it be, a psychopath, sociopath. We have no treatment. There's no way to counteract it. So now having these rare, findings of people who have had these dams breaking, people in psychology were like, oh my God, this is the key. This is the skeleton key into how we can maybe find some type of treatment which could lead into prevention. So I think that's why I got so excited, why Berger got so excited, why everybody at my symposium got so excited, because it's like, if this is a real case, and along with the other cases, the few that have been reported that are all described as a dam breaking, we are on the cutting edge of forensic psychology into a great breakthrough, and I think this is why I went so hard with Bittaker, is like, what he's saying to us could be the key into an insight of how we could treat others, of how to make that dam break, make somebody actually feel the emotion, feel the empathy. They might be a diagnosed sociopath, but is there a treatment we could do to make that dam break maybe early on in life, before, they go on to heinous crimes or a life of crime.
Have they ever tried any kind of psychotropics or things like, DMT or ibogaine? Because it's been known to kind of...
Funny? One forensic psychologist has done it, and it was up in Canada. Now, this was at the height of like when Manson, the 60s, when, and he did some psychological experiments, and he dosed an entire prison. The experiment went awry, and it was completely shut down because of that experiment. It hasn't been tried since. And then, Manson and his whole thing. So,
well, that's different. That was the MK Ultra, that whole thing that was conducted by the CIA.
Right.
That wasn't done by
doctors. But the basic premise is, psychedelics have gotten a bad name because of just stuff like that. It's just now starting to kind of come back. It's just now starting to come back into like, psychology and us looking at it and saying, could this help us? Because, with DID, this is actually a great way to explore hidden trauma, with patients and stuff. Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, have you ever done any of the psychotropics at all?
I haven't. I've read a lot of studies about them, using them in like forensic psych and stuff like that. And from what I've read, there have been, it's been great with exploring trauma. It really does. It's a leeway into going into someone's, subconscious that we don't have access to, or they don't even have access to, So I think there's a lot of benefits. Ayahuasca has I think it's an 80% cure rate for heroin. So, and, now people are getting off of, just prescription medication for depression, anxiety, taking, mushroom supplements, stuff like that, which I think is amazing because you're getting off prescription stuff and you're going more towards, natural, which is always way better. So there's been a lot of, it's starting to come back, and I think I'm pro for all of it. I think it's a great way for us to dive into trauma that maybe we can't explore, that we don't have access to.
Yeah. I mean, they're using it on people that are, dying of cancer just to kind of make their last, because they can't. I mean, there's a documentary series on Netflix right now where they kind of, a doctor explores all these things with how it's rewires people's brains, and
it does,
and lots of soldiers with PTSD have had enormous successful results, but they can't get it here in the States. They have to go to Mexico, these clinics, or they have to go to Canada. I think Canada may be doing some clinics, but I'd be interested to see if there's been studies without the ones that they did in the 60s, because those were more like they were using them as,
you can't even really,
they were using them as lab rats. They were lab rats, and they were actually looking for a truth serum, some way to kind of manipulate information out of people. They weren't trying to heal them, and they just overdosed them on it. Like Manson became Manson because of that. And they did it to Whitey Bulger too, inside, and a lot of other prisoners where they were just using them as lab rats. They didn't really, there was no rhyme or reason. They just give it to them, say, let's see what happens.
Right. I think, we should really maybe look into having an expert on who's, doing this currently. That would be a great person.
Yeah.
Maybe we could all dive into, because I think we're all pro for it. And I think it has astounding benefits.
What do you got to lose? You don't have nothing to lose, because it doesn't really do anything to you. I mean, it's like, it's not harmful to you. There's no residual effect other than just a lot of times, I mean,
And, it really hasn't been done. I don't think anyone's really done a dive into, could that help with, antisocial personality? No one's really studied that aspect of it.
Well, I think a lot of the reason is because the big pharma wants to pump them up with the SSRIs. And then that's, and that's, they're making money off that. And, and that's continued, that there's no, once you're on them, they just keep on keeping you on. They say, don't go off them. I'm like, and then, you have all the, like when they started doing that is around the same time where they're just was the Columbine. That's when all that shit started happening then. When they're putting all these kids on SSRIs, and all of a sudden these school shootings and this and that and all things that we had never seen before.
Right. So, yeah. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you, I think SSRIs can help people. Some people, but if there's any way you can try different routes, to mess with, your neurons and any type of brain function, try to stay off it as, much as possible. And I understand
when the side effects are suicidal tendencies, it's not, that's a roll of the dice.
It is.
I mean, I was on Zoloft for a week when I was like, after my father died, and it was a very trying time for me. And I was like a zombie. And I was having, and then I started reading all the side effects, because my doctor gave me, well, maybe this will make you feel better. Just going through a rough time. And I had to get off them really quick. I had them on for a week, and I was like, I couldn't believe how.
I've seen people in institutions, in hospitals, and just turned into complete zombies. Like, very intelligent people can't even, it's,
I'm not about, I think there's a natural way of curing some of these things. Some people legitimately need them. But I think that I don't think it should be a blanket cure.
Yes.
No.
No, it shouldn't.
Psilocybin is natural. It comes from nature.
Natural. It's a natural,
it's, and it's been, they've been taking it for centuries. Cultures have been taking it centuries. And I have known tons of people who have gone completely off of the SSRIs, any type of anxiety, depression, who have switched to that, and they've said they felt better than they've ever felt before. Yeah.
And especially when you're looking at like your neurons, in your brain, and you're taking drugs that, that are, with your functioning, intakers. It's not something I don't think anybody should be doing unless they really, really, truly need them. And I think a lot of people get confused, especially with depression, of whether you got to ask yourself whether this is environmental depression, where there's just something that's happening in your life right now, this, like your father dying,
circumstances,
circumstances, that kind of stuff, opposed to, everything in my life is okay. Why do I feel so down? Why am I so depressed? That's when you really need to seek a doctor and really think. But for like other stuff, I think people need to step back and think, okay, am I just feeling low? Is this just, hormones? I think a lot of people go on drugs just because of like they're just feeling low, or hormones or whatever.
Well, because they can get them so easily.
Right.
They'll go to a doctor and they say, I have anxiety and I can't sleep and I'm depressed, and here's a script for whatever. And then it just, you can't like that. When there's plenty of other, the other thing is there's things like lion's mane, which is mushroom, which has no, psychotropic effect, but it does the same thing to your brain where it actually repairs the brain.
Right.
You don't feel anything. You just, I took it for probably a few months, and I could definitely feel how it just kind of leveled me off, and it made my brain clear, and just less foggy and way more or less depressed, and or anxiety. So there's definitely things. I'm curious on if there are other prison studies outside the U.S. because I know the U.S. has such this weird thing about drugs. I mean, it took forever for them to, when I found out why they made pot illegal had nothing to do with the drug itself. It had to do with William Randolph Hearst, who was a newspaper magnate and who owned all these forests for milling, found out that hemp was going to be used more than paper. And so he had the government outlaw hemp, and hemp was much more durable, and it basically cost nothing to produce as opposed to waiting for all these trees. And so he basically had a campaign against it and created the whole Reefer Madness campaign. So it had nothing to do with it because cannabis was legal for a very long time and people have been using it for years. So it's just strange how these things get demonized and then you can't use them, just like psilocybin.
Yeah.
And I think they can do a lot of good work, but
I think
I'm curious if they had that. If you know anybody that's doing.
I'm going to look into. I think we need to get an expert on because this is something that's always, I've been interested into looking into because I'm very pro for it, and I know you guys are too. And I think, let's bring some light to it.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm curious.
Right.
I mean, I don't. Cindy's never experienced it, but I experienced it like when I was younger and in high school and college, and it actually helped me kind of plan some things out in my life, and that I had no idea. It just taps into a level of your brain that you never thought existed, and makes things when you come out of that door, you're like, oh, now I figured some things out, and it's not so. Things aren't so scary, and I kind of have a path, and I know why I'm here, because that's the majority of the stuff with these serial killers that we keep on coming up with. But you explain to them, they don't really have a purpose. There's no purpose. Yeah,
it's like they're just wanderers. It's true. It's like and
then when they start killing, they that's their purpose.
It's almost like they're trying to feel something. They're like we said, with the purpose or feeling something. It's like they're just trying to have some type of connection or experience. It's they're so disconnected. You got to wonder if that type of method could help them.
Or at that period of time when they you feel like they're going in that path, and they could that if you can intercept that moment before they actually kill and take it to the next, to actually act out on it before they they may be talking about it. They say the trifecta of like killing, torturing animals, and screwed up relationship with their mother, and then I think what was the third one? I can't remember what the third one is. The trifecta.
It's the McDonald triad. It's been disproven, but I mean, like the bedwetting, the killing of animals, that kind of stuff. It's been disproven, but what I know exactly what you're saying is like there is that fork where it's like whether they could go down one road or the other road. It's always like that's the whole purpose, is trying to find that sector of like maybe this could be a means to send them on towards the right path.
Yeah.
And we have an expert coming on soon speaking about CU children.
Right.
And that's what we're going to be discussing, is how do we intercept them at such a young age so they don't end up, as serial
Turning into
killers.
this.
Yeah, turning into this. Exactly.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to. Yeah, if you do some research, we'll do some research, see if we can find.
Yeah, let's find somebody, because I think it is definitely worth exploring and bringing some light to.
Yeah, I can't imagine someone hasn't tried doing it.
It's funny because you would think so many people have done. I always call it the prom date syndrome. Of like, you think everybody has done it already because it seems so basic, but nobody has done it. Kind of like the girl that you think, is so pretty, she's been asked to prom, but everyone's too scared to ask her to prom. Like with the brain scans of serial killers and killers, there's only one guy in Arizona currently doing it.
Well, no, there was a guy here in California too.
There was another guy?
Yeah, because when we did
Dr. Dietz.
Yeah, when we were doing the Green River Killer documentary.
That's the same guy.
Oh, so he's in Arizona now?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Dr. Dietz. Yeah, okay.
Same guy.
Yeah, we talked to him when we did My Uncle's the Green River Killer.
Do you talk to him at all?
I haven't talked to him personally, but I've talking to Dr. White, has been following, because I've been saying, why aren't we getting the brain scans and doing this? And he's like,
we should have him on. We should have him on. We'll reach out to him. We'll have him on, because we had a really interesting conversation. We actually went down to one of his labs and saw how they did it. And like I said, he actually, his brain mapping matched to serial killers. And then he found out through his mother that they had killers in their lineage.
Well, that's what we're going to be exploring soon. All of us.
All right. All right. Well, this has been awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying up for us.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you next week. We got some other people coming up, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I got some good ones coming.
Yep.